Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today, our third lecture in the course Educational Leadership and Management. This lecture deals with leadership and power. First, although we have discussed what is leadership, but here we discuss what is leadership. Leadership is the ability to inspire people to follow your instructions voluntarily and manage the completion of a project without exercising any form of force. In a very simple sense, we can say that the action of leading a group of people or an organization. If we go to the meanings of the leadership, then it may be the guidance, it may be the direction. Then another very simple definition, that is the state or position of being a leader. Then another very simple definition, that is the leaders of an organization, country. The plural of leadership is leaderships. Then we move towards power. What is power? Here power means the power regarding the leadership. What is power? Power is person's ability to control activities of other people. Power is derived from leadership. As we know that we often see people with power as leaders, whether they have powers over a small group, whether they have power over an organization, or whether they have power even in a country. This makes sense in that power can be defined as the capacity to produce effects on others or the potential to influence others. The most important part of this definition is the potential to influence others. This is very simple definition, that the potential to influence others is called as power. Influence can be said to be the actual changing of a person's, the changing of a group, the changing of the attitudes or values or behaviors due to use of influence tactics. Without any change in attitudes or beliefs, a person is not typically considered to have power. That is why the term influence and power so often go hand in hand. However, while we might consider an individual in power a leader, it is important to consider how a person achieve his or her power by looking at a historical leader who used referent power tactics and then contrasting this leader with one who employed coercive power tactics. Yes, the power is very important. Power has very important role in the leadership. It is a person's ability to control activities. It is a person's ability to control other people working in an organization. What is the relationship between leadership and power? The key difference between power and leadership is the term of effect. Power is the exercise of leadership, and leadership is only defined if you have power. You can see this is very beautiful, that power is the exercise of leadership and leadership is only defined if you have power. Leadership always involves attempts on a leader to affect behavior or a follower in a situation, whereas power is not equivalent with influence on another person's behavior. In the world we are living today, the roles of power and relationship are often confused. What is power? What is leadership? This is confusing. Although similar meanings have been used, then it can be distinguished and distinctly defined between the leadership. The key difference between the two is the term of effect. I have already told it to you. Power is the exercise of leadership. Leadership is only defined if you have power. Leadership always involves attempts on a leader to affect behavior or a follower in situation, whereas power is not equivalent with influence on another person's behavior. Here you see leadership does not exist without power. Thus we have to reflect on power in order to lay a theoretical foundation for responsible leadership. One cannot lead without power, so we can say that leadership is dependent on power. A good leader is one who has some form of power. Now, then we can say that one cannot lead without power, so we can say that leadership is dependent on power. A good leader is one who has some form of power. Then again, leadership and power. Leaders have power in situations. Power is simply the right to provide leadership. The exercise of power is a complex process and appears to be dependent on content, personality, and expertise. To our next slide, that is types of powers. There are different types of powers. To exercise influence, a leader must have power, the potential or ability to influence decisions and control resources. If we see the types of power, there are different types of powers, that is position power, personal power, power stemming from ownership, power derived from capitalizing upon opportunity, power stemming from managing critical problems, power stemming from close to power. What are different sources of powers? There are so many sources of power. Some of them are discussed over here. Power refers to the capacity to influence others. So, where does it come from? Have you wondered why some managers seem like natural leaders? Or perhaps you are interested in what power you hold over others. What is legitimate? The first type of power here we are going to discuss, that is legitimate power. Legitimate power is the authority under the Constitution to make laws and to alter or repel them. A law dictionary adapted to the Constitution and laws. Legitimate power is the formal authority granted through the organization and job description. A project manager is placed in charge of a project team so that they may delegate tasks. So, project team. Then comes a supervisor is given legitimate power over their subordinated so that they can ask for a range of behaviors from the new employee. Then one will find his source useful as you begin leading any team. However, it cannot be relied upon alone to make you an effective leader. As found in dictionary, related to legitimate power means judiciary. Then there is another type of power, that is reward. In this lesson, we are going to discuss what is reward power. Reward power is simply the power of a manager to give some time of reward to an employee as a means to influence the employees to act. Here you can say, as leaders may be granted both control over what other value and ability to change negative aspects of the job, giving us reward power. We see reward power used when a manager gives salary increases based on performance or when a supervisor replaces faulty equipment. We can say that rewards can be tangible or intangible. The key distinction between tangible reward and intangible reward is that tangible rewards are physical things, while intangible rewards are not physical things. Examples of tangible rewards include monetary awards, wage or salary increase, bonus, or some certificates and gifts, whereas intangible rewards can also be effective. Example of intangible rewards include praise, positive feedback, recognition, more responsibility, including a rise in status, and even a well-timed thank you. An obvious advantage to intangible reward is that they can be as effective as tangible rewards and cost relatively nothing. If there are some advantages of reward powers, then it also has some disadvantages. Employees may be tempted to engage in unethical or illegal behavior to meet the criteria to earn the reward. For example, a salesman may engage in fraud to introduce customers to purchase in order to meet the production level required for a bonus. Then, reward power may also create competition between employees that is counterproductive, hurting teamwork and group productivity. Now we go to our next slide. Rewards can be as simple as allowing a person to work on a special project or attend training, granting favorable shift, or bringing in pizza, etc. If employees are given feedback systems to evaluate their managers or co-workers, they also hold reward power. The risk in using only reward power is that you may have a limited supply, for the rewards may become too commonplace, losing their power. Then the third type of power is coercive. In coercive power, both leaders and members may apply coercive power, the ability to punish with the goal of compliance. Punishment is an old-fashioned carry-a-bag strict management style. Managers who use this power threaten to fire or lay off employees who fail to meet their standards. Then we can say that coercive power is the ability of a manager to force an employee to follow an order by threatening the employee with punishment if the employee does not comply with the order. The most important concept to understand about coercive power is that it uses the application of force. It seeks to force or compel behavior rather than to influence behavior through persuasion. Example of coercive power includes threats of write-ups, demotions, pay cuts, layoffs, and even terminations if employees do not follow orders. In order to be effective, the manager must be able to follow through on the threat. If failure to comply does not result in punishment, threat of punishment becomes meaningless and even counterproductive because employees may cease to respect the legitimacy of the manager's authority. There are some disadvantages of coercive power. What are these disadvantages? It may be effective in the short term. It can create serious problems for organizational effectiveness in the long run. Coercion tends to low job satisfaction, which should not be too much of a surprise. Who like being intimidated on a daily basis? If you are not satisfied with your job, you will bail as soon as possible for a better one. Here we can see on this slide that team members apply coercive power through gossip or open demands of co-workers when they break the team norms. Then we can move forward that coercive power often results in negative relationships since naturally resent being punished. This is the negative effect. With today's intelligent workforce, using coercive power alone will result in a team who comply with orders only when the manager is working. Power. This is something that is more commonly heard in discussions regarding international politics, war, or sports. Seldom is this word used in sophisticated business discussions. However, management does not know the sources of power. Power is nothing but the possession of authority, influence, and certain skill over others. This power, depending on how effectively it is used, allows a business to take a lead over its competition. Most of the types of power are used to take control of the employees reporting to you as a manager or to have a discipline in the organization. If we can say that power does not mean a bad thing. Using power to right the wrong is in effect a beneficial process for the organization. In fact, having power can lead to right things in life. A leader has the power to lead, a manager has the power to analyze things, an executive has the power to do things for his company. Thus, there are many sources of powers. Some of these sources here we have already discussed. These are legitimate, reward, and coercive power. These legitimate, reward, and coercive power are all associated with the organization. You see over this slide the company, your team, and where your job sits in the cooperative ladder will influence how these sources of powers may be available to you. Now there another type, that is expert power. If I can say that expert power is power based upon employees' perception that a manager or some other members of an organization has a high level of knowledge or a specialized set of skills that other employees or members of the organization do not possess. Here you can see that many leaders become successful due to their own personal power sources. Yes, have you ever noticed the respect we give to experts who help us solve our problems? If we go them for the solution of our problems and they help us, then we have a lot of respect for them. Expert power comes from specialized knowledge. A software engineer who arrives with specialized skill set may have considerable influence on the team's decisions and directions, even if that person lacks any organizational power. Again, I add something that expert power can actually turn power dynamics upside down because its use is not limited to the formal leaders of an organization. Any member of an organization who has a high level of knowledge or set of specialized skills that others in the organization do not possess may exert expert power. For example, if you are given you are a high paid lawyer in any firm, you must have a case filed with the court by the end of the day of your client loses the right to file the lawsuit, which happened to be worth millions of dollars. Your word possessing program crashes and you think you may have lost the legal complaint. Now we move to the next, that is referent in power. What is referent power? It is the charismatic individual has referent power who follow them because we admire their personality and wish to be like them. Who is your office celebrity? The person everyone wants to follow. Referent power is one of the 5 bases of social power and it is defined by Ravan. This definition is: The ability of a leader to influence a follower because of the follower's loyalty, respect, friendship, admiration, affection, or a desire to gain approval. Referent power in leadership is the ability of a leader to cultivate the respect and admiration of his followers in such a way that they wish to be like him. We have already seen this. Referent power is based upon a leader modeling his behavior to demonstrate appropriate conduct and decision making. Employees will observe a manager's behavior and act as they believe their managers would act in the same situation. In other words, you refer to what you believe the manager would do and do the same. The manager becomes a point of reference for your behavior. You may not even know that you are modeling your behavior after your manager. As you can imagine, this type of power means referent power relies heavily upon the trust of employees in their manager and developing employee empowerment, allowing employees to make decisions in certain work situations, trust and enabling employee empowerment tasks sometime to develop. It is important for a manager to be aware of cultural differences when attempting to use referent power. For example, according to some theorists, the general cultural value of egalitarianism may be harder for managers to learn the respect of the employees. Now we go for next slide. What is power combination? When we look all five sources of power, it is the combination that are most interesting. We have studied the different types or different sources of power. Here it is said that when we look all five sources of power which we have studied in the previous slides, it is a combination that are most interesting. What is third pillar? Power is the third pillar of leadership, the other two being knowledge and trust. It means that after knowledge and trust, the third pillar of leadership is power. The first one is knowledge, then the other one is trust, and the third one is power. What are effective leaders? Why effective leaders use power appropriately and know? You can see over here there when and how to be directive and when to delegate, and when and how to be consultative, providing guidance instead of being directive. At the last, what is the conclusion of our today's topic? That an excellent leader is able to understand and leverage the skills and talents of each individual of a diverse team to meet the group goal. In organizational setting, leaders must exert power to achieve individual goals. Leaders must be able to influence their followers to achieve greater performance, their superiors and stakeholders to ensure the validity of the organization. Some people who claim to be leaders want you to feel like they are important. They all talk about their achievements, they all claim seniority, they all drop names and try to associate with important people. They all do just about anything but truly inspire you. True leader does not waste time trying to convince you of their importance. Yes, of course, true leaders will make you feel like you are important simply from their behavior and how they interact with those they encounter. A true leader is someone that people believe in and want to help without being required to. True power does not demand action, it inspires it, and true leaders does not demand respect, they earn it. At the end, it is a conclusion. Again, I repeat it, that true power does not demand action, it inspires it. And true leaders does not demand respect, they earn it by themselves.